Okay, thank you first for inviting me, Niklas. I'm kind of proud to be here at this moment. The observatory is created. I think this is the kind of initiatives that we need a little bit everywhere. When we started to work on this, when I started to work on this 15 years ago, it was because I discovered that the world has never been so simple as today. Everything is about money, and in terms of inhabiting, everything is about cities, everything is about urban. And I thought there was something wrong about that, so that we should address different questions. Notably the question why, what's happening with rural space. Everybody is saying that more than half of the rural population is urban population. By the way, this is not based upon any consensus on how we count that. We can also say that more than half population is a peasant population. And when we think about inhabiting, then what do we do with this population? How do we deal with that? And I'm presenting this and going through this story. It's quite a complex story. I hope I can do it within a given time. I will run through it, and if you have questions later on, I'll be happy to develop points. So this is a little bit in parallel. You will see some things on the screen in English, some imagery. Some of the images may be shocking to people. I'm really sorry about that. I apologize. But this is what people say about rural space. It doesn't exist. Empty space. It's about old-fashioned things. It's about retarded people. It's about non-educated people. And when things happen, like when Trump gets elected in the States, or when extreme rightist organizations are coming to power in France or in Switzerland or in Austria or in Holland, everybody says this is because of non-educated rural populations. And that is not true at all. It's all about demagogic kind of communication. And this is what I'm trying to work on. So what we did back with Nikos a couple of years ago, in 2014, is trying to see how can we develop another way to see this place? How can we understand rurality? And we noticed that it is something that is very broad, that is very holistic. You cannot say rurality is about agriculture. You cannot say it's about peasantry. It includes agriculture and peasantry, but it's also all these things. It's about vernacular practices. It's about it's happening underneath the aesthetic landscape somehow. It's things underneath. It cannot be wrapped up in an aesthetic landscape. And then these aphorisms, as we call them, were kind of a trial to say, this is kind of the body that we work with. And as you can see, it is a very interdisciplinary body. It goes from urbanism to all kinds of humanist sciences, going through gender, economics. It's many, many things. So we worked on this a little bit more, and became aware of the fact that it becomes very difficult to talk about rural space without talking about money again. So we plunged into economics, and today this is a little bit what I want to do with you, is go back into economics and see how rural space is about different kinds of economics. The question to me today is not so much how can we include rural space in global economics. It's not so much how can we make this work with global economics. It's more about what kind of economics are emerging from this space, and how can you understand them, and how can you give them values. So it's about values again. So I will go through this notion of economics very fast, go back to oikos and the roots of economics. You all know this, so I don't need to explain this. Through gender and what's happening in rural space, and the notion of household, back to what we can do today. This is what we understand about economics today, and I don't know why it's going twice all the time. This is what we understand as economics today, and this is a very reductive way of understanding economics. It's a social science. Most people forget that. Economics is a social science, and it's a social science that deals with the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, and with a theory of management. And management, Noam Chomsky says, is about informed consumers making rational decisions. Okay, this is nice to start with. What does it do? It creates what we all know, a value, the dollar, and also the euro, and so it's a value system. And this value system is counted as we count it in GDP, gross domestic product. And gross domestic product is the way this economics of what we call the Chicago School, the growth economics, is saying, you know, these are the values of the world. And at the same time, these economics are saying, oh, it's not just about some economics, it's the economy. It's the economy. So they say, the economy, for instance, you hear, the economy is going bad, or the economy is in crisis. Well, you know, that's not really true, and we will see that. So GDP is this notion of value that is developed by economics, and it is an indicator. You know, it's a synonym, synonymous of growth, and it's a growth, global growth economics. And it defines and adds up all measurable economic activity as financial values. And, you know, it divides up countries in the world. And, you know, you have the dark countries, which are doing well, and the light countries, which are doing well. And the funny thing is that for the poor countries, money is more expensive than for the rich countries. You know that in Greece, right? I don't need to explain that to you. You pay more interest, you pay more, yeah, it's more difficult to pay back, so money is more expensive for you. And probably if you take an image of Crete today and translate it into GDP, it will look the same, it will look like this. And so we have to get rid of that situation. Why? Because the indicator of GDP shows a lot of things that are interesting, all from the primary sector to the tertiary sector, to tourism. It counts everything that's happening, okay? But it also counts things that are, it always goes twice, that are not very interesting and that may be contrary to value, like crime, war, destruction, rebuilding. You know what's happening in Lebanon? It's very nice. You have a war, we rebuild. We have a war, we rebuild. It's great for GDP. It gives growth all the time. Okay, theft is nice because you re-inject money in society, so you can consume it twice. Drugs, prostitution, it is all counted. You name it, it is counted. What is not counted, what is measured badly, I'm sorry, there's something wrong with this. It's because it's made in Apple, and I have to make it compatible with Microsoft. What is not counted, or badly counted, is the primary sector. Agriculture is very badly counted in GDP. When you look at this curve, since in 1 century, you see what the prices of food do, what the prices of hourly wage does, and what the price of food does. You know, it's strange. So we go in 1 century from spending 80% of our family budget for food back to 12%. That must be used for going to spend holidays in Chania. So it's so there's something really strange going on. It's not really counting it well. Care is not counted very well. The care situation in all countries, all developed countries, is disastrous. And that is because it's not very well counted by these economics. What does it not measure? It doesn't measure informal labor. It doesn't measure informal care. It doesn't measure unpaid household work. It doesn't measure barter economy. And it doesn't measure subsistence agriculture. So there's all kinds of things that are not measured by this system. So what do we do with that? What we really see is that GDP, we know that has a growth lock-in. It wants to keep on growing all the time. It's a kind of Ponzi figure. I don't know if you know what a Ponzi scheme is. We have this famous American guy doing 130 years of prison for having made a Ponzi scheme, Mr. Madoff. And the real economy, these economics are in fact a Ponzi scheme. They need more entrants all the time and more stuff all the time in order to keep functioning, right? So they're very happy with advertising. Advertising is 98% of Facebook. It's 99% of what you do today, what you see today. It's all about advertising. And advertising, Noam Chomsky says, is about keeping people dumb, so that they seem to be happy and they don't deal with real politics. You know, it's something about that. But advertising is not about informing people so that they can make rational decisions. GDP is very happy with sustainability because you know, we can turn it into production again. About climate change industry, this kind of lies. There is no such thing as a zero-emission industrial product, and electrical cars, we know, are much worse for climate as diesel cars, for instance. So I would define the dominant economics as those economics that define production as a monetary value, excluding other values. Other values are excluded. And by saying so, I make you very I try to put your attention on the point that it's not the economy, but it's a system, an economic system. And of course, I have a reason for this. We will come to that. What is the inhabiting figure that works with growth economy? It's the urban. It's the urban figure. Right? The two are synonyms. You have growth. When you live like in growth, you make an urban system. Why is that? Because urban organizes throughput. You have to import, export. And all you do is increasing this import and export in order to make the urban figure. And what is create next to it, it's what I heard the word hinterland in English. I'm trying to abolish this word because it's an awful word to talk about rurality. But this is really, hinterland is an urban effect, right? It is an urban rejection. It's about, it's about urban surface space, pollution, escape space, tourism. It's all about urban space. I have to go through this. So the urban figure is like a privileged colonialist figure of materialist consumption. And when you look at this figure, this is Paris. Very proud of its 37 square meters per person only, and the white circle around it is its ecological footprint. And of course, as long as we keep on saying that the urban is an ecological system because it's so dense, we are, and as long as we don't look at its ecological footprint, we have no problem. So this is about economics, as we understand it today, the Chicago School of Economics, and about its habitation system, which is the urban. So when we talk about the rules, somehow we have to come back to the roots of economy. What is economy? And you know that in Greece, where does economy come from? Oikos, Nemein, I think. It's about naming the home being the house, the family goods. So it's about household, mainly, right? Household. So let's try to take a look at what's happening in households. When looking at that, this is an image of an oikos with the andron and the genesium, right? And my point is that the entire economic system, the entire Chicago economic system that we are talking about is an economic system that privileges the andron. It's a male economy about production, about male production and power, and it rejects everything that's about the genesium. And we'll try to make a parallel between the andron and the urban, and the genesium and the rural. So this is a very difficult thing, but I will do it without your consent, and you may throw tomatoes afterwards. Then use Dutch tomatoes, they're not so good. So we're talking about households. What is a household? And when you see, originally the household is some kind of community, and it's about commons, about solidarity, about work sharing, shared revenues. 50 years ago, the woman of the household would be the one who had the purse, right? And everybody works in the household and puts the things together, and you have money, but the money is secondary. In the household, the household is some kind of holistic phenomenon driven by care. And you have a lot of soft qualities, sympathy, mutual support, qualities, affect, desire, we heard this, the desire for rural space, shared desire for improved future and dignified life. And this is what organizes the flow of production. It's not production that organizes a household, but it's care that organizes a household, and production is secondary. So we can learn something from that. What happened to this, about a century ago with the Frankfurt kitchen, architecture decided that we have to separate the household into two things. One is male space, it's the living room, it's a space of representation and male power, and the other one is female space. It's the kitchen, it's smaller, it is you only take 2.75 meters to go wash the dishes. It's fantastic. And it was seen as a feminist achievement, right? But this separation of the household also became a separation of the urban and the rural. And it's the same, it activated the same separation. Rural space is seen as the kitchen of urban space. It is a production space, it is a space of service, and it is rejected from the urban. In Crete, this is the same thing. Probably I've looked for some images, and there is something like that going on, and I heard something like that in your discourse that can be dangerous for what we're doing. I'm not saying that it's not good, but it's somehow dangerous to say that we have to see what happens in rural space, and we have to see how it complies to economic system and the profit of it. Somehow we have to turn around this question in a different way. So it's about confinement of rural space within the urban, and the confinement as some kind of service space. And when you look at the urban family, this goes a little bit further. In the urban family, we have said everything now becomes about male economics. We outsource everything that's happening, all the care business that's happening, everything that's about caring about family values is outsourced. It's about cleaning, child care, baby care, dog care, you name it, everything that's care is outsourced. By outsourcing it, you make it more expensive. Right? When you outsource it, you need more money, because you have to, when you have a cleaning lady, you have to work 2.5 hours at equal salary to pay 1 hour for cleaning lady. And of course, when you use child care, you add insurances, education, everything, so it makes it more expensive. So GDP again loves it. She welcomes the feminist emancipation of women, and their access to male economics. It's very nice, it creates growth. The urban family has become some kind of apology of this. Huh? It's like the kitchen has become really, it has been drawn into the living room, into living space, and you see that they're all a little bit the same. So all you have left is some kind of male representation space in which the kitchen is clean, has to remain clean, and can become sometimes, sometimes you take out the dirt, and it can become dirty at some point of pleasure or pain. Some would say, some feminists would say. So it's really a problem for even in gender situations, in gender studies, and in for feminism. I think this is a very problematic evolution. What's happening now is that we are moving into the Anthropocene, and you know what the Anthropocene is. It is about becoming aware that we as human beings change our environment, we change nature. Nature is not something unfinished, but it's indefinite. It is something that we act upon and that we change. And when you look at the kitchen of the Anthropocene family, you see that it's moving out of the house, it's moving out of the urban city, and returning to something that I would call rural. Okay, so this is an interesting thing going on. Why is that? I have Freud says this is normal because when we become aware of the Anthropocene, we are having a renewed contact with nature. We are looking for a renewed contact with nature. After the exclusive social contract of the 20th century, the 21st century is one of a renewed contact with nature. And this reactivates our thoughts about what it is, to be born, what it is, what nature is. Nature and birth is the same thing. It is a synonym. What gender is, what it means to become a woman, a man. And also it relates to the rural, as Freud says, as a primeval space, as a space to which we always, where we all come from. And somehow this is very important. And when you talk about the sentiment you have of feeling going back to rural space, this is something of the Anthropocene. It's very contemporary, and I think that this is what makes rural space not the hinterland, but the space of innovation. So, coming back to the metamorphosis of oikos, saying that oikos is some kind of is in metamorphosis. The notion of oikos is changing today. We have to my idea, we have to take a renewed look at the values of the feminine. And this is very difficult. I'm sorry, ladies and feminists in this room, but it is a very difficult topic because the last feminist, how do you call that, viewpoints have been exclusively devoted to seeing the female and male gender questions as a social construct. And of course, when you go into the Anthropocene, the question of the natural construct also comes back into this. So it's necessary to come back to these questions. So what happens with maïeutics? Shared goods, managing home, mothering, healthcare, knitting, cooking, mending, educating, cleaning. We want men to do this because they have no value in the economic system, right? But if we redefine the values today, then somehow we can find ways to develop other ways of and when you look at this image is the image of the house of Ulysses. You know the image? It's a very nice image because it's in this house. This is the common entrance. This is male space. This is the andron. This is the gymnasium. It's female space, and this is the treasure room and the arms room. Right. So what this means is that politics and economics are guarded by women. Okay, And I really suggest that we come back to this possibility. And I suggest that rural space is something that deals with that. Because there is a link that we can make a parallel between what's happening in terms of values of the feminine, if we can discuss these again, and values that are present in rural space. Somehow these values are connected, and they all turn about care. So facing an urban figure as one of male empowerment of the self, there is a rurality that may very well stand as the economy of meiotics, of delivery, of care, of the other. And so we can learn something from this notion of the oikos. And by talking about connected values and equivalences instead of equality, maybe we can find other economics and economics of the rural, and economics of the rural that we really have a leverage to do this, because as people now understand, and I can cite Frédéric Bonnet, who is the architect dealing with the French politics of space, he agrees that the urban has a tremendous depth towards rural space. It's a colonialist depth. It's a depth that can be compared to the depth of colonialism, and it can be compared to the question of the depth of male against female in economics. So there's something to be done there. Now, things are happening in, I go really fast, I'm sorry, it's, my time is up already, I see. Beyond GDP, there are many things happening beyond growth economics. How do we deal with the post-growth? How do we deal with after-growth? And we see that many interesting things are happening. We have GPI, which is it's general, I had a note for this, gross national happiness. You have gross national happiness in Bhutan, which you may know. We have the General Progress Indicator, which is GPI. And when you see it's very interesting, because when you start looking at GPI, you see that economic indicators, this is growth economy, are trying to get separated from environmental indicators and social indicators. What's wrong with GPI is that it again tries to include these within GDP, by putting dollar signs beside it. Okay? We have another interesting one, which is the Canadian Index of Well-being. I don't know if you know that. It's very interesting when you see what they want to value. It is community vitality, democratic engagement, education, environment, healthy populations, leisure and culture, living standard, time use. Time use means less stress, better clothes. And I find that a lot of these values are values that we can find in rural space, right? So there are some traps when we try to do this, and dangers. I will go very fast. I can develop those for those who want. It is a danger to include nature, the questions of nature within GDP economics. All what's going on about taxes on CO2 is very difficult. We should avoid this, because it's again saying that nature is part of economics, and it should be the other way around. Economics is a tiny part of nature, right? And the danger is that when you do this, you privatize nature, which means that you have better access to clean water for rich people, to clean air for rich people, etc., which is not an effect that we want. Another trap is, of course, drawing the question of gender within economics. When you see, we can put values against feminine activity in this world, and people have tried to do so. Like, we know that unpaid household work is about 40% of GDP. It's invisible anywhere, and I can say it's only 45% because the salaries used to calculate it are really low. So it doesn't take into account real value. And unpaid breast milk, for instance, is about 45% of total male GDP. It's incredible, and it's invisible. And it is so sad that we are living in a society where we say, you know, we will give powder milk to our babies because this way women can go work in male economics to create GDP increase. It's a very strange thing. Okay, I have to run through this. A danger is to further draw the primary sector into economics. Primary sector is very badly measured by Chicago economics, so let's not do that. Of course, the urban is very dangerous. Tourism is dangerous. It's the first danger of rurality is tourism. So we have to be really careful about this. And in terms of rurality, it's reducing rurality to the primary sector, to agriculture, because rurality is really a holistic body of economic, ecologic, societal and ethical values, and we should not forget that. Okay, I will get to some leads, if I still can have 2-3 minutes. One thing I wanted to talk about is the UNDROP, because I think that the UNDROP is the United Nations Declarations for the Right of Peasants, and I think this is another tool that you can use in your observatory, because it defines very well that what rural space is. It says that rural space exists, comprises various communities of people enjoying their own cultural development, active in various professions, and possessing the right to maintain, express, control, protect and develop their traditional and local knowledge, such as ways of life, etc. When you take this text, which is adopted by all UN countries, including Greece, although it's not mandatory, then we should abolish agricultural subventions, all kinds of things that happen now. We should abolish the thought that the urban is a space that develops economics. You know, it's all, and we have to put these things into new lights. It also states that rural populations are able and have the right to determine and develop their own priorities and strategies. Right? So this means the UNDROP is really saying we have to get another look at rural space, but we have to look at it from within. We cannot look at it from without as urbanists. What I tell most people when they ask me what should we do, I said, point 1, kick out the urbanist. Point 2, kick out the urbanist because all you will make is urban space. Point 2, kick out the economist because all you will do is create growth economy. Okay? And then we have to do something else. And maybe this is where we get. I think that's really important, especially for an observatory, to work on indexes of values that can create a new kind of economics. And this is really about these things: communal belonging, rootedness, birth, life, death, solidarity, care, and education are really important ones. Job sharing, barter, non-expert knowledge, informal activity, balanced just-in-time production. It's about an equilibrium that exists in rural space. And we have to seize that equilibrium as some kind of economics that we can use next to the GDP economics. This is not, it seems to be an anti-growth discourse, but it's not really. All I'm saying, I'm trying to put this in this figure, is that instead of drawing everything in GDP, we should develop other systems, other economic systems that take into account values that we find in other spaces, in living spaces, like the Canadian Well-Being Index, or we can create rural care indexes, and that would be basics of maybe some new kind of monetary system. And here I'm really talking about a long-term project, right? But we can imagine that we invent cryptocurrencies that are not exchangeable against the dollar, but that can somehow help us in better understanding the value of rural space. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry it took so much.